future leaders of the global AIDS response will judge us by what we are doing right now. What will they say? It depends on what future we choose to give to them.
Nicholas Kristof recently wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about our societal tendency to assume that bad circumstances for a person are the result of poor choices.
There's a narrative that underlies many failed policies. It arises from the myth that we live in a land of limitless opportunity, and that those who struggle have simply made bad choices and failed to muster personal responsibility. What would a better social narrative look like? It would acknowledge personal responsibility, but also our collective social responsibility, especially to help children. It would be infused with empathy and a morality of grace that is less about pointing fingers and more about offering helping hands.
The interplay between personal and societal responsibility is central to the global response to HIV and AIDS. Let's listen to a conversation between global leaders on a panel at an AIDS conference in 2030 called How We Lost the War Against AIDS.
For a long time, we overemphasized individual personal responsibility for HIV prevention. Personal responsibility is obviously very important, but it's not everything. What about rape and other forms of gender-based violence? Or poverty that forces young girls to choose between two bad alternatives? Or laws that push some groups of people into hiding, where diseases like HIV can thrive?
All of this emphasis on personal responsibility just increases the stigma. Think about what ABC is really saying. You should abstain from sex, but if you're not a good enough person to abstain, you should at least be faithful to your spouse. And if you can't even do that, then use a condom. In other words, if you use a condom, or even think about using a condom, it's because you have failed to achieve the top two criteria of goodness. You must be a truly bad person.
In the U.S., this notion of personal responsibility played a role in our debates about health insurance. And I think that some of our difficulty was an unconscious assumption that any pre-existing condition was somehow the fault of the person who had it. And of course, infection with HIV was seen as an example of a pre-existing condition that resulted from irresponsible personal decisions.
But you can't say that personal responsibility doesn't matter. It is absolutely vital that everyone takes responsibility for the things that they can control.
No one is saying that personal responsibility doesn't matter. Of course it does. But we also have to make sure that people have the tools to exercise that responsibility. And we have to ensure that we have a social context that supports that personal responsibility.